Hey, did you hear? Fallout 76 isn't going to be on Steam! People try to bring to my attention with great vigor. I, of course, roll my eyes and I think to myself, you imbecile. I don't say it out loud, of course, because we're trying to be a little bit civil. At least the first 10 or 12 times I heard it. And then I started getting a little intolerant, and maybe by the 30th or 40th time someone brought it up, I was a little less than polite. So, recently, YouTube channels like Young Clean Review, Yeah Prince, Tech Gaming USA, they all told us that Fallout 76 isn't going to be on Steam. People see those videos, and they come running to me. They need to know my opinion on it. So, Bethesda not planning to use Steam for their PC release of Fallout 76? Honestly, I struggled to find a reason why this was so surprising. Obviously, this wasn't a video I originally had any intention on doing. I thought I could leave it to the Young Clean Review, Yeah, Prince Tech Gaming USAs of the world. But some of the people soliciting my opinion do give me money, and I do like money. So here I am, talking about it. See, the real reason why I felt like this bore mentioning was because it led me to other thoughts about Jim Sterling, about SidAlpha, about Steam itself, and it all weaves together in a weird way that may to some people look like I'm attacking certain people, but you have to bear with me. This is how my brain works. So it's all tied together with Fallout 76. First of all, let's discuss Fallout Shelter. Originally just a mobile game, with virtually no features to its name. A game that wouldn't get much better until long after the initial burst of players was gone and never coming back. As far as garbage mobile games go, Fallout Shelter managed to keep my attention for longer than it should have. Partly due to the fact I love the happy-go-lucky dated branding that Bethesda uses for Fallout. I have lots of Fallout merchandise, little bobbleheads and shot glasses and lunch boxes and art books, and I think I honestly value the merch more than I do the video games. They're toys that an adult like myself can put on a shelf and glance at occasionally with a smile. Of course, then my wife gives me something like Tails from Sonic the Hedgehog, and I question where she gets this stuff, and she doesn't tell me, so I will eventually have to reorganize my shelf. I don't think there's enough room for both Vivek and Lunch from Dragon Ball on the same shelf. But Fallout branding aside, from a storyline perspective, Fallout 3 butchered the Fallout universe, and from a mechanical standpoint, Fallout 4 butchered the role-playing potential Fallout 3 had. But that's okay, both of those games have mods. Tangents aside though, and expect a lot of tangents with my videos, Fallout Shelter did eventually come to PC, and this is the important part. It did so on the Bethesda.net platform exclusively. Likewise, Elder Scrolls Legends, the Elder Scrolls card game created by Direwolf Studios, was also a Bethesda.net exclusive. Both games would eventually come to Steam, but it was their initial launch on Bethesda.net that was important to the platform. Just like the Curation kit for Fallout 4 and the Skyrim Special Edition, those Curation kits are only accessible via Bethesda.net. These tools don't need to be on Bethesda.net, but they serve a purpose to draw people to the platform. And while this isn't true for the Curation kits as far as the games go, I'm sure newer, more recent videos from one of those channels I mentioned earlier will have told you that the reasoning behind this is due to the fact that Valve charges a 30% cut of all sales and microtransactions, things like that. But most people just don't understand Bethesda's actual strategy behind all this. A well-understood thing in the games industry is that a game's initial launch is a game's most important time. When a game makes the most sales, when a game either lives or dies. But that's not entirely true. You can have a game that is, for all intents and purposes, floundering, a quality product on its own, but it just failed to adopt a user base that would stay. And you can take a game like that, such as Warframe, for example, and then put it onto Steam. The Steam launch changes everything. You see, most video games not graced by AAA gaming, the company gets 2 launches, a regular launch and a Steam launch. But we're going to be focusing on AAA games, because that's actually been a trend on Steam as well. Almost any game getting onto Steam will have a huge burst of users. That burst is not a guaranteed success, however. For every Warframe rejuvenated and saved by a Steam launch, there are 10 or 20 large-scale branded games that fail to retain users. We aren't talking about indie games in this particular case, with no major publisher to their name. Those go unnoticed for reasons such as Jim Sterling and SidAlpha. They've gone into that already, about how Steam's being flooded. We'll touch on that later. But when it comes to AAA and Steam, these games are graced with a huge pop-up when players log into Steam, and a place alongside of the publisher's other greats. The recommendation algorithm says, "Oh, you like insert Bethesda product here, right? You'll love this insert new Bethesda product here." In short, the AAA product is subject to immediate and recognizable advertising the moment it goes onto the Steam platform, after it has already capitalized on its own platform without that 30% cut from Valve. Now, if you don't have a Steam account that's been contaminated by a billion asset flips, the algorithm is going to recommend you to more of your favorite publisher's stuff very often. So, Fallout Shelter and Elder Scrolls Legends garnered immediate recognition on the Bethesda.net platform, and it brought tons of people over, but there were holdouts. However, after going multi-platform, going to Steam as well, they had immediate gains again. Bethesda was able to capitalize on Bethesda.net, having the full price, and then at a 30% reduced rate, they were able to capitalize on Steam. They had their cake and ate it too. A lot of people said initially, "I'm boycotting this until they bring it onto Steam." Well, most people don't put their money where their mouth is. And they played those games on Bethesda.net anyway. But a minority of players stuck to their boycott. Until it goes onto Steam, they won't play it. Well, once the initial burst of Bethesda.net ended, they moved the game over to Steam. Or made it available on Steam, either way. The holdouts, the people who were boycotting it, they felt placated. They went ahead and they picked up the game, and they might have bought some microtransactions, who knows. But by this point in time, Valve's 30% cut was way better a proposition than not getting new exposure and audience at all, which is what would happen if they just left it on Bethesda.net. You see, they expanded the game that was reducing over time. I know quite a few people who hop into games when they make it onto Steam. We have enough evidence that splitting your release can be profitable, provided you had the advertising to get people over to your private website or distribution site, and then move to Steam later. It doesn't make people happy, but as we've already established, these companies aren't doing what they do to make you happy. They're doing what they do to make money. Insanely successful games like Fortnite Battle Royale and Minecraft are not available on Steam, while less successful but kind of similar games like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds and Terraria are on Steam. Steam is not the magic ticket to grant one success or greater success over one's competitors. I know for sure that the PUBG developers are burning with envy over that fact that they're on Steam, they're less successful than Fortnite, and Fortnite isn't on Steam. I mean, there's really no indicator that they're burning with envy other than the fact that they tried to sue Epic for copying them, or at least being on the same engine and copying them. That is a whole can of worms for another day. So I propose that with Fallout 76, Bethesda is taking a wait-and-see approach. If Fallout 76 reaches critical mass and is insanely successful on PC, bolstering Bethesda.net's usage, I think they will keep the game on their local ecosystem, never bringing it to Steam. However, if Fallout 76 fails to retain the kind of user base they want and garner initially strong user base, they'll use Steam as a windfall. And the people protesting Fallout 76 on the lack of Steam, assuming they do bring it to Steam, will celebrate their victory and gladly hop onto the platform, giving Bethesda what they wanted in the first place, a windfall. The new people, who had never seen the game before, will be exposed to it first time on the Steam ecosystem if they decide to bring it over. It'll be a big pop-up saying, Fallout 76 now available, and people will gladly jump onto it. In short, if Fallout 76 starts to flounder on Bethesda.net, it will get the rejuvenating boost it needs by moving over to Steam. And there are a group of people on the internet that act as if Steam is somehow the crucible of online gaming. I come from, of course, a time when we dialed up to private bulletin board service networks before the internet was actually the internet. And when internet gaming was new, because I lived through that era as well, every game had its own website or own private service. The idea of a Steam didn't exist. Blizzard Entertainment, EA, Ubisoft, each of these companies told Steam off, only bringing titles over to Steam when they feel like it. In the case of Blizzard, that's never. And smaller, less successful games like Star Trek Online, they may have a Steam presence, but a majority of their user base comes from a different platform, their private system, like Arc, for example. So when you look at Steam charts for a lot of games, it turns out that, there may be 10,000 users or 6,000 users on Steam, and the vast majority, 100,000+ users are just on the local ecosystem because they don't want one more hoop to jump through. It's easier just to download the local launcher from the website and go. They don't have to have Steam running all the time. Simply put, Steam isn't important. We're in an age where GOG is making a real run at Steam, curating their content, whereas Steam has taken the stance of being an open platform. This has been a point of contention between Valve and an incredibly vocal minority online. Two members of that minority I mentioned earlier, Jim Sterling and SidAlpha, the first of whom coined the term asset flip, both of whom have been tracking the horrible tide of trash that's flooded onto the Steam platform. For people like myself, I never see trash games, or as Valve calls them, fake games in my recommendations. I just don't see them. It's true that indie developers who fail at promoting themselves may end up getting lumped into the category of fake games. The open platform concept has been working for me as a user. I found some very nice games in my recommendation queue, some of which I've purchased. But I've never purchased an asset flip, nor have I cared about them. People like Jim Sterling and SidAlpha, just using the prominent examples because they are prominent. It's not an attack against them, but they're inundated with asset flips in their recommendation queues. They've looked at so many of them. They've perhaps purchased some of them in order to cover them on their channel. And as a result, the algorithm has determined that those are the sort of games that person wants. The algorithm isn't perfect, and there's no guarantee you'll get the things you want. I know quite a few people, they are ardently against anything with a Japanese cartoon aesthetic. My wife and I, we watch anime, so it's never bothered me personally, but those said people I talked about just now, they will shout, "I don't want this weeaboo trash," and they will lump anything with that sort of aesthetic into the concept of an asset flip or a fake game. And they will join in the chorus of the Jim Sterlings and the SidAlphas in saying, Steam is flooded with crap. the algorithm is actually matching those anime games to them on secondary categories, like open world or story driven. So when they say, I'm not interested in this game, the algorithm goes, okay, so this guy doesn't like story driven games because it doesn't understand what the Japanese cartoon aesthetic is and why it drives those people away. This is a failure on how the algorithm works. Not the concept of Steam as an open platform, but the execution. So you got this huge cluster of people going, this is garbage, why is it here? When a good cluster of people still buy these games on the merits of those games. Doki Doki Literature Club is a free-to-play game that I highly recommend to pretty much everybody. It is tagged in the psychological horror category, despite looking like a happy dating simulator. It is tagged that way on purpose. It's a good game. In addition to good games that are simply misunderstood or don't reach their target audience, there are also joke games that evolved into actual games, like Had a Full Boyfriend, for instance, or The Tank Dating Simulator. These games, they have no intended audience. They're meant as a meme, but for whatever reason, they manage to evolve their content and become actual video games. People like them. At the end of the day, who is the arbiter who says, this is a real game and this isn't a real game? You know, what is a fake game? And when a fake game sells 10,000 or 20,000 copies, who's to say it is real or not at that point? Well, a platform like GOG wouldn't let a lot of these games on their platform. And I understand why, because curation of quality is important to them. Steam has decided to go in the opposite direction, become an open platform. They've washed their hands of the content. An open platform is great, provided you can do your own advertising if you're trying to get your game on the open platform. And you can drive people to your private space on that open platform, because otherwise, well, the algorithm is flawed, and just as Jim Sterling and SidAlpha would remind you, there is a flood of fake games where the real gems get drowned out in a sea of sewage. So I think we've reached a point where we can say definitively that Steam is no longer a legitimate method of turning your small, obscure games into financial success. At this point, you may be wondering why I segued into the Jim Sterling and the SidAlpha and how Steam does its things when all I was talking about is Fallout 76. Well, to Blizzard, to Epic Games, to EA, to Ubisoft, to all these companies, Steam isn't necessary. It's a tool that can be used to bring increased profit when used properly. Provided you can handle credit card processing and other mandatory things, Steam's outdated. The technology to do it yourself is there. And quite frankly, I don't think Steam is nearly as important to PC gaming as people make it out to be. At the end of the day, these videos are always my opinion. And they're driven by my opinion. It's why they're meandering, why I always go into segues and side points and blow up what could be a 2-minute topic into, 45 minutes. Well, my personal take on Steam, I wasn't a fan of it. A lot of the games we have now were originally Half-Life 1 mods, or Quake mods before that, but let's just stick with the Half-Life example. I enjoyed a particular mod for Half-Life 1 called Natural Selection. This would eventually spin off into Natural Selection 2, its own game. One day I was logging on to a Natural Selection server, and being Half-Life, it was simply the Half-Life engine. It told me, hey, there's a new version of Half-Life that you need in order to log on to this server. So I scratched my head and said, okay, I guess I'll update. When I updated, it told me you need Steam for this version. I'm like, what the hell is Steam? Steam turned out to be the DRM for Half-Life. It was bulky, it was slow, it always had to be running while you were playing. It was awful. Sometimes it would fail to update, you had to restart, it would take ages to complete your game's update. The servers were just terrible back then. And considering how much resources it used, it was bloatware. Even today, in the back of my head, be it Steam or Bethesda.net or Battle.net or Uplay, it's all bloatware to me. Yeah, I see the convenience, but that convenience has been whittled away over time, and now Steam is more or less the flea market of games. It's not the crucible of PC gaming and shouldn't be regarded as such. It's not run with curation in mind, not quality in mind. Rather, it's a dumping ground for all these companies that are willing to give up 30% of their profits in order to sell in bulk. When you find a pair of jeans at a flea market, and you see the word Levis in the exact same brown patch that would normally say Levi's, you buy the pants anyway because they're cheap, right? Except they wear through and break in about a week or two. That's low quality material you bought. They're defective. That's what you can expect from Steam, the flea market of gaming. It's convenient, but never mistake that convenience for importance. I realized there was this golden age, an era between when Steam was originally this shitty DRM and when it's the dumping ground flea market now. That golden age in the middle when it was just a great service with great games, and having that game on Steam was an endorsement of its quality, that's gone now. It's been gone since Greenlight became a thing. And obviously, Greenlight was a gameable thing. It didn't work out, so they just decided to swipe it all away, make their game an open market, and now we got a flea market with all the hand-me-down games, flooding in with the good games. Occasionally, you'll find a really awesome flight stick in amongst all the crap at a flea market. But at the end of the day, you have to sift through a lot of junk to find something of quality. And that is Steam. So what happens if Jim Sterling or SidAlpha got their way and Steam started curating tomorrow? Well, they'd get sued. Steam, Valve, they would get sued. You see, it's discrimination. When it comes to quality, there's no reason not to be discriminating as long as you build your platform based on that. Unfortunately, Valve has created a content policy where if it's not illegal, if it's not outright troll, it's allowed. If it's not malware, it's allowed. And because of that, they've opened that door. They can't close it again. If they did, they would have to shut down the whole platform and reevaluate one by one each game. They're not going to do that. They've gone past the point of no return. So I don't think we should really care about Steam at this point. Just like Facebook is the garbage heap of social media, so too is Steam the garbage heap of gaming. Fallout 76 may end up on Steam, it may not. The real question is, why should I care? That was my reason for evoking the names of Jim Sterling and SidAlpha. These people who, at least from my perspective, they hold Steam in a very strange place. Like, it was once the golden paradise, and it has fallen from grace. Oh, please change your ways, Steam! Valve, change your ways and go back to the path of the righteous! That's never going to happen. So, I think they've assigned a false value to Steam. A value Steam doesn't have anymore, and will never have again. Now, I find both of those people I mentioned just now perfectly reasonable individuals with a good deal of enjoyable content. I'm sure some people listening will disagree. That's fine. There's always something in my videos for people to disagree on. But it's about time that people stop treating Steam like a monopoly. The AAA studios have certainly found their own way. They don't need Steam. When they doubt a game will be as successful as they want it to be, they'll toss it onto Steam. But I'm gonna pass this question off to you guys because we've covered AAA. I'm just wondering, you guys, what should indies do? Is there another platform they can use that I simply don't know about right now? Or should they create their own platform that in a couple decades from now, just like every other human organization, will become corrupted and contrary to its original purpose? How should indies seek to prevail now that Steam's become the flea market of games? Should they try to make it on their own with their own websites and such? Or is there somewhere else that can take them in? Now, as for Fallout 76, if you think Bethesda cares that you don't want to use Bethesda.net, You are sadly mistaken. The vocal minority is a minority for a reason. For every one person who complains that Fallout 76 isn't going to be on Steam, several hundred will gladly pick up the game. The ratio is so skewed that no amount of internet drama lambing will make Bethesda pay attention to you. Now, if being on Steam is a deal breaker for you, then from Bethesda's perspective, I'm just quoting a phrase that I've used in sales a few years back. They just aren't my customer. See, while we remember the one negative guy at the end of the day, those few hundred other people who just bought from you, that's where the money is. And if you expect Bethesda not to go after the money, you're crazy. And that's why, when the topic was brought up to me, when people came to me and said, they're not putting Fallout 76 on Steam, I rolled my eyes and I heavily resisted insulting them. I mean, some of the people ended up getting insulted, but, you know, I'm no saint. I think you've all figured that out by now. Thank y'all for watching. I'm gonna go play some Monster Hunter World on Steam. No, I'd still have picked it up if they decided to launch it somewhere else other than Steam. Sorry, Steam isn't that important. Y'all have a good one now.